All right. So first of all, Jeff, I appreciate you doing this. I mean, you and I have become good friends. We both followers of Christ. I mean, we have those passions in our life. But I've always looked up to you. I've always tried to kind of model my business the way you've done yours. Mm-hmm. And like we were talking before we got on the recording, I mean, I haven't seen you miss too many pitches. And I just have an admiration for you, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, Bill, I'm happy to. It's fun. This will be fun.
So how'd you get into real estate, and why? I mean...
Work construction started out. I got exposed to it when I was in high school and college. I needed to make money because I was going to pay most of my way through. So I started working construction. I was sort of fascinated by it. I think I look back at what was I fascinated about. I think I was fascinated by the customized nature of it.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like it was programmed in a book.
Right.
And the curiosity and all the things that came from that, I really enjoyed. So then I got my bachelor's. I was interviewing for jobs. That was at UT. And I was interviewing for jobs. And you sort of go, all the job opportunities I got were for big companies and in non-real estate, because nobody went to commercial real estate back then. Right. You told somebody you're getting real estate, it was because you were going to work in residential real estate. And so I didn't really even consider it. But then when I went to the BBA program, got these different job offers from big companies. They were all bigger companies and very non-entrepreneurial.
So it would have been like selling computers or which would be like getting a root canal.
And that was a great job back
right.
then.
No, I agree.
I mean, it was Texas Commerce Bank, IBM, Procter & Gamble, all those kind of jobs. So I had two professors that ended up younger guys at that time, but they ended up climbing some huge mountains themselves. And they suggested, in fact, one of them said to me, why don't you get in the MBA program? Just go straight through, get in the MBA program. And find out what you want to do.
Right.
And so I ended up grading for one and TA for the other and started the MBA program and immediately gravitated toward real estate because I've listened to a group of Gerald Hines came in to talk to us and a group from Trammell Crow came in. Not a group, but a couple of people did. And I was fascinated with it. And I'd heard of Trammell Crow and heard of Gerald Hines. And so I started focusing on that somewhere, probably midterm in the MBA program.
And so where was your first job?
My first job was Trammell Crow, which was so interesting. With Hines, I was on my fifth round of interviews.
Right.
But I hadn't yet Mr. Hines yet. In fact, I don't know if I ever met Mr. Hines. They start you low. And it was a bigger company. At Trammell Crow was still so small. They were hiring 2 or 3 MBAs a year. Typically one started about 1968, 69, one from Stanford, one from Texas, one from Harvard. And so he hired 2 that year. And I was one of them from Texas. The other guy was from Harvard. And I was just so blessed. Look back, I was just blessed.
And so, like when you were going for that job, how many people were you competing with?
I have no idea, but it was a lot.
A lot. So there was still a lot.
But it was fascinating because you find out one opportunity somebody helped you with led to another.
Right.
And I went in, I had an interview. You start with Crow. You interviewed Trammell Crow. Yeah. That was your first interview. You didn't meet and start working up the ladder. And so I walked in at 11 o'clock one Saturday morning. This is I think it's in June. On Saturday morning, that's work day, at least half the day was. Yeah. And so I was interviewing, and 10 minutes into the interview, he said, I'm going to hire you. And he could have knocked me over with a feather because I was just going, turns out, I didn't know at the time, but those guys, a couple of guys who were at Trammell Crow, had met me when they were coming down to visit MBA students. And they had talked to one of those 2 mentors I had that were professors. And that particular mentor had highly recommended me.
That's awesome.
And so I had it just wired. I didn't know it. I was nervous as all get out going there. But Mr. Crow hired me. Then I didn't know where I was going to be and what I was going to do, but I know I was going to work for Trammell Crow.
Okay, so once they hired you, what did they have you do?
Start leasing warehouse space in Dallas, Texas. But he could have been. I committed to go with him. I could have been in Chicago or San Francisco or Houston or wherever. It just had to be Dallas.
Okay, so tell me from how long at Crow and then to decide to go do your own deal.
7 years at Crow, and just tremendous opportunities. Company growing, and they gave me.
Yeah, you were. I mean,
it's
unbelievable.
We all. I mean, I was 27 years old, maybe a partner.
Right.
And so I mean, it's just tremendous opportunities. I love to work, and we didn't have any kids yet, and Ann was teaching school, so had the opportunity. And then in 1980, I left to join with Baker Montgomery and Jack McJunkin as Greg and I formed Center Development, and we had it going. Grew it like mad in the 80s, and then I got out in 1991. I formed Champion, coming out of the devastation of the late 80s.
Wow.
So that was really the story.
Okay, and then when did you and Steve hook up?
Steve and I hooked up. He joined us in 1993 or 4.
It's a long time.
We had started Champion Funding, which was trying to get in the CMBS business.
Right.
We were doing build-to-suits all over the country. We just started. And previous client Nestle, previous client Panasonic,
Right.
previous client Duracell. We're building buildings all over the country a couple of years into it. Right. And I said, this CMBS thing fascinated me. So I wanted to learn about it. So Mike Mayberry and Dick Sessler and they came in internally. We formed the company. And Midori was at Crow Ventures, and it was imploding. So we brought him on board. And then when Amoresco came and fortunately bought me out of that deal, right. Sessler went to something else, but Mayberry took that group. I said, you can go with one guy. I want one guy. Right. And it was Midori.
Right.
So he's been with us 27 years.
Okay, and have you enjoyed the smaller, more nimble company than the big one?
Oh, yeah.
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 I never fit in a big company.
Well, I mean, you're so relational, it's right.
Yeah,
but you are. I mean, I don't know anybody that I've ever met in our business that has better debt and equity relationships than you.
Well, you're doing a pretty good job yourself. So.
Yeah, but I'm just telling you,
I
I really respect the way you maintain and you build and keep relationships.
And we've been able to keep them.
You're the gold standard.
Yeah, well, you're kind, but we don't do a lot of transactional activity too, which helps you. So we're not doing 20 deals a year either, so that helps. But anyway, but Steve's been with me, and I made a note to somebody earlier today. I said, complimenting Midori, and I said, the beauty of Steve is 1 plus 1. He and I are not 2. 1 plus 1 is more than 2.
I'm a big fan of Steve Midori.
He's great.
I think he's smart. There's been several times when I've competed to buy buildings with you, against you, and I couldn't figure out where to get the capital. And every time you got it, it's just, it's just.
Well,
awesome.
It's been, again, you try to treat people well, and they remember it, even if it doesn't turn out as well as you expected, as long as they feel you gave it your all. And,
right. Right. Well, I think people look at you and they, people that, because there's a lot of brokers that want to be developers, and there's people that are kind of on their path, right? And they try to figure out how to go put it all together like you've done it. Yeah. And, I know it's all been hard work, but I think relationally, locally and nationally, you've just done an incredible job with ULI, et cetera.
Enough said. I mean, it's been a blessing.
But you've earned it,
Yeah.
So enough about the good stuff. So tell me the toughest deal. I mean, and what you learned from it.
Well, I think the toughest for me was the first 8 months of the business. I was 1973, and I hadn't made a deal yet. I hadn't made a lease at Crow. And I'll never forget, I started in September. So it's
8 months.
It's actually, first of all, late September. I started. And so now it is April, 1st of May, hotter, I'll never forget, hotter than a pistol. And it may have been somewhere in April. It was so hot. Of course, white shirts, dark suits. And my territory was the Trinity Industrial District. And I'm going through there driving around. Finally, it was hot. It was 95 degrees. It wasn't yet summertime, but I'll never forget. I came back to the house after lunch. And we had those window units. I got in front of that air conditioning unit and just had that going on. And I said, did I make the right choice here? Because it was one of those times, you're 23, 24 years old, you're going, man, this was supposed to be so great, but I'm failing.
Right.
And lo and behold, that next week, and thanks for the Lord's grace, the next week I made my first lease, and it was a big one back then. It was 46,870 square feet. And it was a big one back then. That was huge, industrial deal back then. So anyway, made that deal, and so we're sort of off the races, gained the confidence. But I'll never forget, I still recall 47 years later sitting in front of that air conditioner going, what am I doing here?
Right. Well, because you're betting on yourself, right? And it's scary.
Yeah. Well, they gave you at Crow the training with a phone book, a list of the buildings we have, and a telephone.
Right.
That was it.
So has there been a deal along the way where you learned something that was kind of like the light came on, like where you kind of feel like you did something wrong or you did something really right or you anticipated something?
Every day. I think the one that really, when I look back, we'd done a deal for Carnation back in the late 80s, and we built a building, and a year later the floor slabs started coming up. And it was a mess. And the contractor we had come in from Canada to hit the boom of the 80s in Texas, late 80s, and they'd gone bankrupt. And so the question was, who's going to pay for the $260,000 worth of concrete work? We didn't have to, but this was Nestle. We'd made a profit on the deal. So we decided to fix it. And it was a tough decision. It wasn't tough. It was the right decision. Forget that it was tough. It was the right decision.
Still hard to go write that check.
Yeah.
Right
So, you wake up and you go, okay, you make that call. This is 1987, 88. And then in 1992, nearly late 91, 92, as we kicked Champion off, who becomes our first client? Not Coronation, but Nestle, who had bought Coronation, and the guy that we had done that for, and kept him out of the ditch, which was always one of my favorite sayings, kept him out of the ditch. He was the guy making the decision. We were competing against all the big boys. It was going to be 7 buildings across the country, 5.5 million square feet of space to be built, which were big buildings back then, still are. And they picked us to do the first 3, and this corporate staff was going, how did we pick this new startup with this kid from Texas? We got all that business and just did remarkably well with it. And we built all those buildings. But that was a case of that individual who we had helped get through that mess. It would have been a mess for him if we hadn't taken care of that floor. And he remembered. Right? That's exactly right.
You're relational. He knew you valued him and his relationship.
And so it was 4 years later, and he remembered.
Wow. Okay, so what about philosophy on your approach to business? Like, how do you, I think I know the answer to this, but I'd love to hear you say it.
Well, I don't think I would ever be accused of not being proactive.
Yeah.
I for whatever the reasons, my mother kicking me in the butt, I don't know, who knows what it was when you were little, it made you proactive. But there's just never been much time where I've had to, worry about getting up in the morning or worry about not putting the effort in. My mother was West Texas tough, and that whole concept of, you work, you do it, and you go do it. And figure out a way to enjoy it even if you're having to do it. So proactivity was one. And then the thing that for some reason, somewhere, somehow, the idea of beginning with the end in mind, which Stephen Covey came up with in that book, 7 Habits, back in 1985, 86, somewhere in that time frame. I already had that belief system, but reading that in that book was so inspirational to me because I found that was just so important with everything, with your relationships, with your family, with your wife, with your company, with Jesus, whatever it is. What's the end in mind? And the end in mind with Jesus for you and I is eternity.
Right.
And so with that philosophy of beginning with the end in mind, that's hugely important for me.
Right, me too.
Very much so. And then I think the last, just treat people like you want to be treated.
Right. So simple.
If you get that philosophy,
right.
You don't walk in and say hi to Bill and just go,
right.
Hey, Bill, good to see you. You come in, be excited, show some energy. Yeah. So, show excitement.
One thing you said, though, reminded me, and I'm sorry, it's going to be a story about you again, but in 2007, you guys were the first, I think, in Dallas to get back in. I can't remember the building, but I remember being at my office and hearing that you put a building under contract, and I went, it's time to get in. Swope's in. It's time to get in. Well, I wish I could remember. It was 7.
I would like to say 7. It was actually late 09, early 10.
Okay.
The 2 Richardson buildings around the freeway.
Exactly. Yep. Okay. So
of course, the interesting part about that, we'd been working both those deals for over a year before we actually closed them, trying to get in position so we could get them.
Well, and you got in so early that people came in and bought buildings you sold and tried to get in and out again before the end of the cycle.
Well, some did.
I know, but that speaks to you how early
which means
you were.
We sold too quick.
Right? You never look back, right?
No, I agree.
Totally. Right. So, okay, what do you think good leadership looks like?
That was a tough one. I think first thing I wrote down was admit your mistakes.
Boy, that's true.
I'm probably sometimes too quick. But I think if one thing I've learned, if I'm even come close to feeling like I did something, we had something come up last couple of days around here, and I told the group, I said, guys, we shouldn't have gotten it. We sort of got a box canyon on us a little bit. I said, that's my fault. I should have seen that box canyon coming, and it's because with all my friggin' experience and all my friggin' knowledge I'm supposed to have, I didn't see that. It was just a question of timing.
Right.
And I didn't see that might be an issue in this particular land contract, and it's my own fault. So I've admitted it 5 times around here the last 24, 36 hours.
Right.
And it needed to be. I mean, it was my fault. That's the role I should play here. So that's one of them. The other things I wrote about is, develop a well thought out vision and share it with a team. I think, there's never been a question with anything that I try to be involved in, whether it's forming the real estate council or champion or whatever, being on the board of companies or a nonprofit, that just set a vision and communicate it. Help set the vision and communicate it and reinforce that. People love to be led by people that can look out and say, this is where we're going.
Right.
I love to start out conversations with, here's where we've been, here's where we are, and here's where we're going.
Right.
And I'll do that first time I meet somebody,
right.
And sit down and talk about champion or talk about my family or talk about a nonprofit. Because I just think people will follow people that have a perspective and have the energy to head that direction.
Right. You've got a conviction about what you're doing, and I think most people want to be led.
I think that's right. And there's guys like you and I that don't want to be.
Right.
But that also that can also be a curse.
But
because it can be difficult to live with,
right.
as you know.
Right. Well, because you're always the last guy to get paid, right?
Yeah.
I mean, all those things. Yeah. So, so I'm not going to ask you how many cycles you've been through, but you've been through a bunch of them.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So how do you get through it? I mean, we're in a time right now where, the political divide in the country. I mean, we just had an election that it split pretty much down the middle. Yeah. I've never seen. Used to be you could sit and talk with someone and have a disagreement or have different philosophies and not get angry. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's just nuts what's going on. But so tell me how you get through these uncertain times. I mean, because real estate's it's a cycle, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, somewhere in the past, and I can't tell you exactly where it came from, but there was a communication that was said to me, and it was my early years. It may have been in college. Can't even tell you who said it, but that 95% of the time and 95% of the people, when a stressful situation comes at them, they back off. They lose their energy. They lose their ability to press forward.
Right.
And so whether it was 1987, 88, when we were facing all the problems at center at the banks and all the meltdown that occurred and bankruptcy issues and all the things we were dealing with, I just look back at all those. For some reason, my screwed up personality is such, I get stronger.
Right.
And I don't know why that is. I can't tell you what it is, but the difficult part about it is once you learn that and you learn that a little bit about yourself, you find yourself feeling like you have to take that role.
Right.
And, does that make, it's weird. It's
total sense.
It's weird, but and I also don't think it's something that's necessary in your DNA. Maybe it's in your dominance characteristic. Maybe it's in something that comes out in the DNA that you have and what you learn growing up. But once you learn that times get tough, the tough get going. Right. And you just sort of go. I mean, that was sort of Mr. Crow. Man, Crow may have had the impact on me because he was a guy when times got tough. He just didn't want to even listen to it. Sort of like me right now on any election stuff. That's over.
Yeah.
Okay? God's got it. He made the call.
I'm with
you. He wants to go that route. I mean, I don't want to watch CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. None of it. It is over. Okay?
Me either. I'd rather watch reality TV than that. I don't like reality TV.
Let's go to the next one.
Right, I'm with you.
So I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Well,
but
I think for me, like when I'm in times when business is good, it's easy, right? But I mean, real estate's never easy. But you don't have to guess what to do.
And it's gotten more difficult as we've gotten older and more involvement because it's become a much more detailed business.
Right.
You think how little it was what we had to do to go get a project done before and all the effort. But, today you can't smoke through something.
Right.
You got to know your stuff.
You can't fake it. Right.
And
I think I'm never comfortable being passive. Yeah. Like if there's been times.
There is no doubt that's the true about your car.
Well, that's true about you too.
No doubt that's okay.
But I mean, there's been times when I'm going, okay, I don't know if I should zig or zag. Like I don't kind of know where this is going.
Sure.
And I don't think you just go to go. Yeah. But I have always seen you to be one that's kind of been out in front. So you've got convictions. Mm-hmm. You seem like a person like when you have a feeling or you have some peace about which way to go, you go.
Oh yeah. Try to.
Right. I don't think you've got much gray. You're black and white.
But also, I think some of that is part of, again, it evolves for you. I have a tremendous amount of curiosity. I mean, I read at least 2 hours, 3 hours a night. Right. And read a lot here at the office, just try to keep up. But I really believe that there's a curiosity that comes, and and that's something you learn. When somebody says to me now, my poor wife has to put up with this all the time. Let's watch this show, okay? Some Netflix deal or something, because Susie and Bobby are watching it. They watched it last night and said it's great.
I'd rather get a root canal than do that too. I do with my wife.
I have difficulty, doing that because I sure it may be entertainment, maybe enjoy being with her, but I'd much rather read, and it's not typically fiction. It's something curiosity I have about something.
So you're learning.
I'm learning.
So you know what? I feel the same way. I'm not a fiction reader. Yeah. I will read something where I feel like I'm progressing or I'm learning something. Yeah. But I like some made up story. I'm out.
Well, I love the Tom Clancy novels for a period of time because there was strategy involved.
Right.
And the strategy, I've always gotten fascinated by strategy. Right. And so probably because I've always been so weak at it, but I love those books. And so I read on so many airplanes all the time that I was reading those books some. Right. But now it's become a fascination with a lot of other things about personalities, about motivations, about Jesus, about just anything that I can learn. I try to really keep track of our real estate world. Right. I mean, I'm totally engulfed in things about our business. Who's doing what? How are they doing it? Right. What's going on? And that's typically not a local thing. Right. That's a national thing to see what the trends are. Right. Now, unfortunately, if you were in Dallas 10, 20, 30 years ago, what you saw happen in LA or East Coast was setting a trend for what might happen here. Right. Now we're setting a trend.
That's what I think.
And so it's hard. It's hard to stay as you can't do as good a job looking in the future because now Dallas is a place to be. I mean, so many times you and I were on airplanes, flying to New York, flying to Boston, flying to LA, just trying to get money to come here.
Remember when Dallas was redlined? No institutional money had come.
After the 80s. So that's why we ended up building, doing all the projects we did in Atlanta and Chicago and Memphis and LA and places we were going, just trying to find wherever the money needed to go. If we stayed in Dallas, we were going to be in pretty bad shape.
So have you ever through your career worried about failure? Do you even think about it? I bet you don't. I don't know.
No, well, it's interesting, Bill. That's a great question. I think you're driven to do some of the things you do, i.e. study, learn, be curious. I think some of that's to become knowledgeable, to protect you against failure, okay? Because I know that. It's like my frustration, as I said, the last 2 days, because something hit me that it's a simple thing, but it just frustrated the dog out of me that I didn't see that coming, and I should have, given the history.
We just had a presentation on a deal, and I've kind of got a reputation for being a decent presenter. Yeah. And I went in there and I just screwed it all up. And as soon as I got out of there, I went to my people. I said, I'm really sorry. Yeah. I mean, it was like everybody was spread out in this room and you couldn't get any contact. Yeah. So you make me feel good because my first approach was, I'm sorry. And it went on for a couple days too, because it drove me crazy. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because it's kind of my role and I dropped it. I mean, I didn't.
I tell you what's spooky now, and this is a tribute to our Lord and Savior. And I don't mean the conversation with you and I on this podcast to go this direction, but it is amazing when I ask the Holy Spirit, it's yours, guide me, take me, help me, even for a business presentation, okay? It works.
Okay, I just got to chill up my back because I'm just going to tell you, and I don't care if these people don't want to hear it or not, but I pray before every meeting. Yeah. I do. Yeah. I ask for guidance. Yeah. And I ask for guidance every morning, and I think it's awesome. I mean, awesome. It is. I mean, because it's really good to have that power riding on your shoulder, right? In my opinion.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. Okay, so earlier version
Where
of
are
yourself.
we? Where are we?
We're down. Okay, if you could give advice to anybody, what would it be? Somebody, let's talk about these 20-year-olds and these young people getting in the business. What's your advice? I mean, I know I see so many people looking for work, and we're in a market where everybody's kind of just going, wait, right? And I'm one that thinks, because my next question is going to be ask you what you think of the future, but I'm one that thinks this isn't going to be real bad. I kind of think we're going to get going again.
Oh yeah.
But so what, people want guidance. What do you, if
I wouldn't have said this, 30 years ago, but this again is part of what you learn about the business. And we're also broken, and we're also needy.
right.
And the constant thought that has gone through my mind the last 10 years, and it's just helped me so much. It's helped me apologize for things. It's helped me ask for forgiveness from people.
Right.
Just love on others, encourage them.
Right.
Just encourage them and love on them, because it's tough out there.
Right.
I mean, I needed somebody besides that air conditioner blowing on me. I needed somebody loving and encouraging me right then, because that was about as low as I'd been in 8 months or so, and I was just going, what am I doing?
Right.
So anyway, that was.
And what would you say to somebody though that's trying to get into the business right now, and because
get in, even if it's the lowest, go to work for an appraisers.
Get in the game. That's what I think too.
Appraisal,
whatever,
title company,
right?
Whatever, get in the game.
Right.
It's a great business. I cannot imagine not being in this business. It was the perfect business for me, my screwed up self.
Yeah, you could have been selling copiers for 20 years.
Okay.
And I'd have made more money.
Oh, yeah. I think we'd all make more money.
No, I'd have made more money if you were selling copiers and I was in the real estate business.
Yeah. So, but anyhow, what else I had? Of course, back to my second comment was just be curious.
Curious
my notes
is a great idea.
Being curious. I tell people if they want to get in the business and they're talking about getting in the on the deal side. I said, do you know how to run Argus? It used to be the common thing you say. Now it's not quite as definitive, but learn. If you're not, when I was at Crow, felt like I was working my tail off. I took construction courses at night because I felt so inadequate and even understand. I'd worked construction. I knew more than 95% of the people did doing what I did. For sure, those guys at Crow, because they were all finance jocks out of Harvard and wherever. But I took 6 hours of construction courses just to learn more about construction. And so I just be curious, learn. You can build up your knowledge. And I think the third piece that comes with that is, you have the ability in this business to become an expert in a certain facet of it.
God,
so quickly. And so I told a guy years ago at Workforce, we were over on the Central Expressway. He said, man, he just really wanted to get in this part of the business. I said, tell you what, come on board here. Okay? We'll give you 30 days. I want you to know everything that's happening, the office buildings at the corner of Northwest Highway and Central. He said, that's it? I said, that's it. So he updated me, came in after about 3 or 4 weeks, and I said, he gave me an update. I says, okay, you now know more than anybody in Dallas-Fort Worth about the office building business at the corner of Northwest Highway and Central. He looked at me like I was crazy. I said, no, you do.
You do.
You're tracking it. You've spent 3.5 weeks or whatever learning that. He said, well, what do I do now?
Right.
You want to go to Park Lane? You go to Lover's Lane.
Right.
That's what I said to it. That's
beautiful.
That was it.
Right.
And so, that's the opportunity. You can start and you can become an expert on something very quickly.
Right.
Even on the finance side.
Right.
Okay. You can become an expert real quick, but it doesn't mean you're an expert. Of that, you're an expert of that subset of that. But you can take that and build from it.
But because people want information, right?
And
if you are solid in your knowledge base of something, you're creating value for that client,
and you're creating value for yourself.
Right.
More than anything,
that's good.
You're creating value for yourself.
Right.
So, and then I guess the last piece of that was the thing that has really fascinated me, and it came upon it 25 years ago, and the part of the reading was to understand the motivations of others.
Right.
And by that, I've learned that until you understood your own motivations, you really can't understand the motivations of others. So when you're sitting around, you're young, you're trying to figure out what are you going to do, where am I going to go to work, where am I working? if you can't understand your own motivations, you can't really be a very effective individual working with others until you understand your own. Once you understand your own motivations better, and that moves, it changes over time, it can change from night to day. But when you understand the motivation that you have, what motivates you, then you can be a very effective relationship building because you'll start focusing on the motivations of others.
Right.
And we had a deal. I love Michelle Wheeler. Michelle, I tell everybody how much I love you. But Michelle Wheeler worked with us, chief financial officer, and she was frustrated on the deal we were working, and she moved over on the product side a little bit because she wanted to learn. She wanted to become not just a CFO. So she was dealing with an issue, and I just said, she had much stuff up on her whiteboard, all these whiteboards. I said, Michelle, erase all that stuff. Well, I'm standing there in her office, erase all that stuff. She erased it all. I said, okay, now I want you to take your pen. I want you to write motivation up in the upper right-hand corner, question mark. And I said, don't ever erase it. Because I said,
so smart.
When you're dealing with something that's really a struggle, especially,
Right.
understand your motivation and theirs. And it was like when I somehow turned that key to that kind of, and I can't tell you how I got it, where it came from, and I've used that example. Not you, Michelle, but I've used that example in so many people over the years, clients, customers, contractors, architects, and trying to understand why do we do what we do?
Right.
Why are we motivated this way?
Right. Why are they doing
And a lot of it has nothing to do with the individual you're dealing with. It's to do with yourself. What's going on here?
Right.
And boy, I tell you, in the nonprofit world, it is a godsend because in the nonprofit world, people really struggle with dealing with people like you and I who are so positive, so go forward when they're dealing with all of the multiple issues they have to deal with in the nonprofit world. Right. Staying on point with what their mission is.
Right.
You and I can float around, move and jig and do what we have to do. Right. So that motivation thing is just huge. And so that's been my biggie, I guess, the last 25 years.
I think that's so brilliant.
Because
it's basic, but it's so good.
It's so good we lose sight of it.
Right.
We go through our lives and we lose sight of the importance of that. So, I just, motivation question mark.
Well, because early in your career, I'm sure you were motivated to financially, right? Mm-hmm. But it was never, I don't think it was ever your focus, ever. So now that's even off the table. Yeah. So it's kind of, one of the things is it's kind of cool that as you just keep being effective and you're doing it for different reasons. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree totally.
Okay, so what do you think the future looks like?
I wish I wasn't the age I am because I'm as excited today. I always get pretty excited, but just take, in my case, DFW. Yeah. Really, where would you rather be?
Nowhere.
In the next 20 years, 30 years, I'm not going to be around that long, but in this place, right. In 2010, we came back here because we thought the decade of the 10s to the 20 was going to be the decade for Texas. And I think what we're getting ready to realize is that's true for Texas, but the decade 20 to 30 is the decade for Dallas. Austin will be second, but Dallas-Fort Worth is going to explode. When I started here, there were 2 million people in Dallas. There are almost 8 now. And it's like I tell a lot of people, they'll compliment us and say, boy, you guys done just great. If you couldn't do it while the market quadrupled in size, something's wrong with you. Right. If you couldn't do it, you had to persevere. There have been times you said, boy, I really want to be in this business because it's crazy. But, so I think DFW is going to be fabulous. I think Texas is going to be fabulous. I think commercial real estate business is going to be fabulous because there's so much change going on with all the artificial intelligence, with just all the things, the technology occurring. I think commercial real estate is going to be challenging, but I think it's going to be phenomenal because of the growth that's going to bring about. So I'm pumped about Champion. I don't know. I assume Steve, Mark, it's going to be a group continuing this thing on after I'm long gone. But I'm excited about Champion and the not necessarily the reputation we created, but the desire to do it right. Right. The desire to try to do things right. Right. It makes you have to work a little harder, work longer, but the desire to do it right. I'm excited about Trek. I think the real estate council, I'm very prideful.
You should be prideful.
Of many things I've got too much pride for, which is the worst 5-letter word in the dictionary. But I'm just really excited about what the future holds for Trek and where it ends up. Because in a 30-year time period since we started it, you look at where it's gone and you look at where it can go the next 30 years.
Right.
No reason it shouldn't just even go greater.
I agree.
And the industry needs to support it because it does so many great things.
Right.
It is the go-to place. Not knocking ULI because I'm trustee of ULI.
Right.
I mean, I've got all that background, and so, but Trek is focused in Dallas-Fort Worth.
Right.
And it's just a great organization. I'm focused on my family. I got 4 kids. I got 4 great spouses that are frankly better than all my kids. I got 10 grandkids, and I do, that are just wonderful. I got a wife who puts up with my crazy personality. That's great. Got friends like you and so many that you develop. The relationship side of the business as you get older excites you even more because now it's not about trying to climb the next hill of the mountain.
Right.
It's just doing a damn good job and making it a better place.
Right.
So that drives you. And then for me, the last 20 years, but really the last 10 years, relationship with Jesus. I'm about in 2nd grade, and I want to get to 3rd grade, and so that's driving me.
Learning and getting close.
Getting closer to Him and understand what that means. So, I'm so excited for the future. I mean, I feel like at times I got the energy of a 30-year-old.
Okay, and do you see quitting?
Oh gosh,
Never.
what for?
No way.
I mean, you can always spend so much time
I
on the
knew
golf
the
course.
answer, but
you can always spend much time at your ranch.
Right.
You always spend much time with your grandkids.
Golf. I mean, I can't do it that often.
I mean, Ann only wants to see me that much. I mean, it's not
Right.
like she wants me full time.
Right.
So, I mean, I see these guys retiring, and I wish them well.
Me too.
But there's too
Doesn't
much.
look good to me. I just doesn't.
There's just too much. There's
Well,
too
you got
much you
so
can do to
much
get back.
identity in your business.
Yeah, but-
and all these relationships. What are
Yeah.
you gonna do? You know the part I don't get. First of all, I think business is never easy, but it's probably easier for you today, and tomorrow and the next day. It's going to get easier every day because you've built a great reputation and you've got great relationships. So
Well,
you can get things done easier than somebody that's 26 coming in the business.
Yeah,
Why would you go put that on a shelf?
Yeah, there's no doubt, and I think as long as you've got your health, I think the health thing is
The health is God's blessing.
and that's you see where that takes you. But no, I'm for the young people on this call, for people young to me, 60 now, but
Right.
for people in this industry in Dallas-Fort Worth, they should just be so excited. And they should be just every day fired up about getting up, going that first tee and teeing it up and getting after it.
Yeah. And one last thing, I just, because I got to say this, I so admire, so you're sitting here and you've got all this positivity, all this accomplishment, and in the last 6 months, you see an opportunity in industrial and you're jumping in.
I never dreamed we'd go back.
I love
but it's
it.
just, it's
I just
unbelievable.
love it.
And I think it's going to be, we're going to have a good long run in it. I think,
Right.
I think
the
industry.
Oh.
Not necessarily champion, but the industry.
Yeah, I
so this
agree.
is the case where it's different for us because we've sort of developed a reputation over the years of being on the leading edge. Hey,
You've
we're
always been a developer, right?
but we have not been a leading edge of the industrial, so it's been fun to see it, trying to understand it better. What's the motivation behind all these companies trying to decide, how am I going to distribute my product? How am I going to get in the hands of the customer? Trying to understand that, and I've spent a lot of time focusing on that. What does that mean today, but what's it mean in 3 years,
Right.
5 years?
Right.
But it's change, which is wonderful.
It's exciting. It kind of keeps you going, right?
yeah.
But
Yeah.
I really want to thank you for taking the time. I mean, if I wasn't sitting here, I'd be the first guy to listen to this podcast because I think you got a lot of knowledge and you've experienced and accomplished a lot.
Well, you're kind of Bill. You have too.
Well,
We've been
and
blessed.
thank you. But the other thing, is being the guy that started Trek. I would be so proud of that. I mean, to have the vision you had there, and I just appreciate it.
Thank you. There was a group of us. I mean, Steve Means, who's long gone now.
I knew
Bill
Steve
Seacrest and I were emailing each other last night. I mean, I love Bill. And Bill helped me form Champion. Bill helped me develop the ideas of Trek. Yeah. But it was a kick. It was needed. We need to pull away from something. We just didn't have an organization coming out. There were no developers in 1988, 89.
Right.
It was everybody's dying.
Right.
But to pull that together, get it going, was really special for me.
Before I got involved, I always looked at Trek as the gold standard. Like I was in other organizations, and I always looked at it as the gold standard. And now that I'm on the inside, it is.
Yeah.
It is a great organization, and I've only got another month to screw it up, and I don't think I'm gonna. I thought I was a little worried about it early in the year, But
you had COVID bail you out. You know the beauty of the last. You know what the beauty of the last 8 or 9 months has been. We can blame anything and everything on COVID,
Exactly.
and of course all these companies are going to be doing it.
Right.
On these fourth quarter earnings and fourth quarter projections, it's just going to be wipe anything out that was bad.
Right.
Get it off the books. That's when the stock market's probably going to go. Phew.
But you're bullish on the future in Texas.
Oh yeah. Cannot imagine. It's like trying to find money and bring it in here years ago. Anybody that's a high school senior that's leaving here to go to wherever.
They're crazy.
I mean, go, great if you want to experience something.
Sure.
But you look at the trend lines and what's going on.
Right.
That beach may be pretty somewhere, but good luck finding a job in that place in 4 or 5 years.
Right.
So it's I'm just so excited for what we've created here. Now, if we just don't mess it up, which we will, but don't mess it up.
Right.
Hey, Bill, great to be with you.
Thank you, buddy.
Great to have the time together.
Yeah.
That's it for our show. I'd like to thank Bill Cawley and Jeff Swope for a wonderful first installment in our Legends of CRE series. Keep a lookout for future episodes. We've got some fantastic guests lined up, and have a very happy, healthy, and relaxing holiday season. Until next time, I'm Bill San Antonio. Thanks for listening.